Within this webinar, I'm going to do a quick demo of the PMO template set that you get through the Smartsheet Solution Center. And there is now an area within that template set to introduce baselines to you. So this is a new feature that's only just come out this month. So I will be including a little bit on baselines as part of the demonstration. Once I've set up the template and shown you how to customize it, I'll be handing over to David, who will show you how to form a link to the portfolio dashboard into Microsoft Teams, because that's something that we get asked about a lot through our clients. Q&A opportunity all the way through. Do keep the questions coming. That's what we're here for. Okay, so with these templates, just setting the scenes, you've been asked to set up a PMO solution to include a request and approvals process, a project-specific plan and dashboard, and a portfolio dashboard to roll up the information to. You would need to share the dashboard to Microsoft Teams so that management can see the status of the projects without having to log into Smartsheet. So this is the scene that we're setting, and we get quite a lot of customers coming up to us saying, you know, we want to start, we don't know where to start. There is a solution center with lots of templates inside, but sometimes even though you might be using a template set, it's still not terribly clear how to customize it for your own personal use. So the way that we're going to do it is I'll download the template set live today. So we're doing everything from scratch. I'll show you what you need to update to the intake sheet, the project folder, and the portfolio folder. And then we'll test the solution by running a few project requests through. And then David will show that portfolio in Teams. So I take it you all know how to log into Smartsheet. This isn't a training session. I'm going to go quite quickly, but I have prepared a workspace that you can have access to. And within that workspace, I have got a tips and tricks how-to guide to doing everything that I'm demonstrating today. So if I just collapse that list, you're going to be, you know, talking through how to download the template set, move it into a workspace, and then I'll be going through all these steps of customizing the templates, looking at the intake sheet, looking at the form, the automation, the project level information, and the portfolio level information. And just to show you, it goes in step by step how to do all of these things. So you can have access to this sheet at the end of the session just by filling in our evaluation form at the end. And then you can guide yourself through how to do this template set. So I'm just coming back to my browse folder. Okay, so the Solution Center is found on the plus sign on your navigator bar on the left-hand side. So I'm just going to click into the Solution Center, and I've highlighted the projects area on the left-hand side. And these are some featured project templates that people use to start off their PMO solutions. So I'm just going to choose this one called Project Management Office. This has a lot of different setup all ready to use. So if I click on Learn More, it takes me through to the Smartsheet Help. And once I'm in the Smartsheet Help, I'm just waiting for it to load up, gives you a little bit of an overview of what this template set is. There's a great big download button, which I'm just going to click now, and that's going to download to my Smartsheet. I'll put the folder into my Sheets area, which I'll get to in a second. I just want to show you what you get with this template set. So I'm using this diagram. It's a really good diagram. So within the template set, you get an intake form. So the way that these sheets are all linked is you have an intake sheet, and that intake sheet takes requests for projects, and it has an approvals automation built in to the intake sheet. And then the logic is once someone's requested a project and had that request approved, you would then go to an area for the project template folder, and you would save as new, just as it says here, with the name of the project from your approved request. And that will set up a number of Smartsheet items pertinent to just that project. Within the project items, you get a metadata sheet for some statistics that you need to link through to the intake sheet and the project plan, and those metadata will update your dashboard automatically. But there's a bit of customizing to do in there. You also get a project plan itself, where you would then list all the tasks, who's assigned to them, when they're due by, and this is where you would set your baselines if you wanted to use that new feature. For every project that comes into the intake sheet, you do this process, save as new, and you get these items that are pertinent just to each individual project. And then as part of this template set, you also get portfolio metrics and a portfolio dashboard. And that gathers data from all of the different projects that you have created through the use of your intake sheet and your saving as new. And it will display a high level roll up of all the data from all of those areas. In order for us to get this flow of data going from the intake sheet into the project plans and the metadata and up into the portfolio dashboard, there's a little bit of customizing to do. So hopefully by now my template set has downloaded into my Sheets folder. And the first thing that they recommend on the step-by-step guide is to move that template set into a workspace so that when you go to share, it's easier to do. So I'm just going to pick up, drag and drop my template set into the workspace I've set up for today, which is my tips and tricks workspace. So here we go. So that's the first part done. We've downloaded the template set. So next we have to start updating the templates. So the first thing to do is have a look at the intake sheet. And this is what you get. So the intake sheet is a request sheet so that when people request projects, a line will come in to this sheet, and then we have an approvals area here. So you can work with what you get from the template, but my recommendation is to have a quick look at the project ID and make sure that the auto number formatting is what you would want. So I'm just going to change this to project request and then 000. So we've got there a project ID, which I've just updated. The only other column that I would definitely recommend updating is the project categories column. This column is just saying category 1, 2, and 3, and that's too generic for anyone to use appropriately. So these things like, let's say, business critical could be a project category. We could have introducing new items, implementing change type projects, or business as usual. I'm very good at typing and talking at the same time. So these are different types of projects that could come as a request. So I've just updated my categories there. And looking at the intake sheet, I think there's a couple of things missing from the template set, which most people would have in their intake sheet. And one is a project description. You've got a project name, but there's nowhere here to describe the functionality of the project that you are asking for approval for. So I would just right click, insert, and put in project description. It's just a text field. And the other one I would also recommend is to make use of a new automation, and that is an approval outcome date. So when the project request comes through, I'm trying to type and talk. When the request comes through, there's an automation in here already to send that request through to the sponsor for approval. But there was nowhere on the intake sheet from the template set here to say when the approval was given. So to set up an approval outcome date as a date data type is recommended as a change to the intake sheet. Other things that we would need to change on the intake sheet is the form itself. I've added a couple of extra columns, so we need to represent those columns on the form. So you can just click, drag and drop the new fields or the new columns onto the form. Actually, the approval outcome date doesn't need to come on to the form, but I would have a look through the form and make some changes. For example, this is the email address for the person that needs to approve your request. Okay, so for me, project sponsor is a bit ambiguous, so to add some help text there, also really useful. You can use the required to set anything as required. So we definitely need sponsor, project manager, and the target start and end are optional. So you would need to update your form, save those changes. So the last thing within the intake sheet that we would need to update is the automation itself. So if you go into automation and manage your workflows, the first thing you would need to change or look at potentially is the automation permissions. The template will download in a restricted state, and that means that people have to be shared to your intake sheet in order to be able to approve the projects. And you might not necessarily want to share your intake sheet with all the different approvers, all the different project sponsors. So I'd recommend just changing it to unrestricted. And that way, if somebody has an email address stored in the project sponsor column, then they will get the approver's workflow automatically. Within the automation here, we've got an approved new project automation pre-written, but it does need a bit of customizing. So we're just editing it. The trigger is fine, but you just haven't got any messages in here. So I would recommend customizing this to add a little bit of message data. So I've just got some pre-written, so I don't have to do loads of typing as part of the demonstration. So I've just put in a message body, and I've got the message that will go out on the email. And you can see here, message includes all fields. Now, you don't really want all of the fields to go out with a message, because within that intake sheet, we've got approval columns, and we've got columns that are set up ready for data from the project plan itself. And if you're sending that all out to the approver, it's irrelevant. So you need to go to specific fields and just pick the fields that are on the form. So only the fields that are filled in on the form are required in this message. And that's all. So we've just updated the message there. And then we've got these messages going off to the submitter about whether it's been approved or not. And again, it's going to include absolutely everything in that intake sheet, and it doesn't need to. So we can just say this is a message only, and I've just got a little message here that I can just click and drag over. 1 second, copy and paste. And I'm going to do the same on this side and just say that it's just a message going out. So I don't want to send the whole record to my submitter to say that something's been approved. I just want to say it's been approved, and this is the project name that has been approved. And lastly, I want to make use of that new column that we added, which was all about the date that the approver approved the item. So we've got here an action called recorded date, and we are going to use the outcome date that we just set up. I'm going to do that action on both. So recorded date and make that the outcome date. And that makes use of this lovely feature. When someone does the approval, the outcome date will automatically feed into that intake sheet. Okay, so you can see here that they're just downloading the template set and trying to use it. You've got all this customizing to do. So that's what you need to do to the intake sheet itself. And then we need to do some customizing at the project level area. So clicking on the project level area, you've got this template that you will right click and save as new each time a project comes along, but this needs a bit of work as well. So starting off in the project plan, this is your repeatable plan that will be used for every project that comes through the process. As you can see, this plan has got data in it already. You've got some things that are in progress, some on hold, some complete. As a template, it's not a good starting point, because if you leave the template with all of this data in these different stages of progress, then you're going to have to amend every single one every single time. So the recommended changes that I would put in here, if I just go to grid view, it'd be a little bit easier to see them all, is the status column. At the moment, this is a manually operated status. There's no formulas in here, but I would recommend popping a formula in just to make it automated. So if I pop formula in there and allow it, I can then convert that to a column formula. So now this is an automatic status column. When you have access to the workspace, you can see the formulas I'm copying in. They're written out in full with descriptions on that tips and tricks worksheet. Okay, so looking at this project plan, we have target start date, target end date, schedule date delta, and another one, let's say schedule delta working days. Now this are 4 columns that Smartsheet put in place in the template before baselines came along. So pre-baselines, this was a way of getting a manual working baseline. So what one would do is delete all the data in the start and end dates. And then once your project has been planned using the actual start and end dates, you would then copy those dates into the target dates area and save. And then as your actual dates move around while the flow of the project moves, these target start and ends are set in time, and you get this delta of how far ahead or behind the original planned dates you are. Now, if you're going to make use of the new baseline features, you don't need these 4 columns as part of your sheet, because the baseline feature will repeat 3 of them as part of it. So I'm going to delete these 4 columns from my template because I will be using the baselines feature. When you delete those, your schedule health becomes unpassable because the RAG ball was using some of that delta information to set the color of the rag. So I've got a different formula that I'm going to pop into my rag. The rag ball at the moment is set to just red, yellow, and green, but I prefer to use the red, yellow, green, and blue just to show not started as well as complete, overdue, and in progress. So I've just changed it to include the blue, and then if I just delete the formula that was there and put my new formula in. Again, this formula is in the tips and tricks sheet, so you should be able to copy it. It's showing as overdue at the moment because all the dates are in 2019 and 2020, which it's not great sample data there. So I've updated the RAG, I've updated the status, I've deleted the old baseline columns, and now because this is a template, we just need to tidy up the data. So take out the example names, we need to remove the dates because you just have to remove them from row 3 and row 7, and the predecessors take care of the rest. And we also need to just set in this template everything back to 0. Once you set all of the percentage completes back to 0, notice that your status goes to not started and all your rifles are overdue. But don't worry about that. As soon as you put a date in, they won't be overdue anymore. Okay, so again, all of these changes are listed in the tips and tricks workspace. So set the child back to not started, update, remove the dates, update that. Just make sure that all of the tasks are the tasks that you want for your project. So obviously, I'm just going to keep this demo with the sample generic titles here. But when you do this for yourself, you would go through and you would set your phase names and your activities to something pertinent to your projects. Make sure your durations are correct and your predecessors are all in place. And then save. So quite a bit of customizing needed on the project plan itself. And then I think that would be enough for now. Within the project level, we also have a dashboard. And the only change to the dashboard required is a logo to be added. So double click the logo, go and find your logo and pop it in and save. So all of the rest of that dashboard is automatically preloaded from the template, and it's a pretty nice dashboard actually, I quite like it. So that's all we do with the dashboard. So we have updated the intake sheet and the project level part of the template. We now need to look at the portfolio level of the template. And this is where we need to just do a bit of tweaking to the metrics. If you remember when we were in the intake sheet, we changed the category 1, 2, and 3 in the project category column to a different set of categories. So you need to reproduce that change in this sheet as well. So category 1, I had as business critical. So you just rename these columns as appropriate. And then I had introducing new. Oops. Implementing change. And we had a fourth one. So this is just showing that you can add columns here as well. I think it was business as usual. And then just copy all those formulas across to your new row as well. So in the tips and tricks sheet, I've just put, if you updated the category headings in your intake sheet, you need to repeat the update here in the metric sheet as well. If you updated the schedule health values on the project plan, you need to update them here as well. So the schedule health was green, yellow, and red, but we also added blue. So I need to just add a blue row in here and just copy those formulas down, and I need to add blue at the bottom as well, and those formulas automatically copied down. And then this set of metrics, this is counting how many projects within the workspace there are, how many are within each of the different categories. But as you can see here, we've already got a number 1 and we haven't used the template set yet. So this set of metrics in the template set does count the templated project plan as well. And I don't think realistically, when you're looking at your portfolio dashboard, you want to include the template as part of your statistics. So we just go into here and just put a -1 in that one, in that one, and in this one, because we just don't need, actually it would need to go in this one. We don't need that set in here. It's saying it's on green, but I think it would be on blue. But anyway, I'll leave it at that for the moment. So you just need to add a -1 to those formulas to remove the template from the statistic. We're nearly there. We're nearly customized this template set. And like I said in the introduction and in the invite to the webinar, it's all very well having the template set there, but if you don't know all these steps in order to make it work for you, then people sort of, you have a go and then there's too many changes to make and they get a little bit lost. So the last thing is to update the portfolio dashboard. So this dashboard here, but I do need to pick up, before I go into the dashboard, the form URL from the intake sheet. So I'm just popping into the intake sheet, into the form, grabbing the form URL, and then I'm going into the portfolio level, into the dashboard itself, and we're going to edit this dashboard. And here you've got the form that people would fill in order to request a project. So just double click that widget and click on the change button. And then we just replace the URL there with the form URL that we just copied to the clipboard. Click on apply, and there is the intake form. The only other things to update on this particular dashboard is, again, you just pop your own logo where it says logo here. And we also need to change the two charts because we added a fourth category. We need to make sure that the chart is going to find that fourth category. At the moment, the data capture is not capturing my new created column. And when you put the newly created column in, you need to come in and tick it and then switch it back. And then do the same with this one as well. So here we've got an extra column and an extra row. So click on it, OK, add the column, and turn it back and save. So there you go. I have amended the template. I have made it more specific to my requirements. And now it's ready to be used. So how do we use this template once we have made it ready for us? So the first thing we would need is someone to request a project. So the project is requested through the portfolio dashboard. So if we go into the portfolio dashboard, here is the request form. So I'm just going to call it test and number 1 demo May, project description, testing setup, because I am just, it's a business critical. Project sponsor is going to be me. So I'm just going to pop my email address in there and a target start date. Submit. So I've put through a request and that should come up in a moment and tell me to approve that request. So it's not quite come through yet. So when we're demoing live, you always have to wait a moment. Is it going to be there? It's not quite there yet, so I'm just going to cheat and go into my intake sheet and approve. Oh, here we go. It is there now. Look, please approve the project request. And the project request approval is a form. Now that would go to my email as well, but because I'm in Smartsheet, I can pick it up from the notifications. All good. Approve. So I've now approved that project, and you can see here that approved has just gone in against my my first request. You've got all of these empty rows, and these are just because the template said someone had used those rows and then deleted the content. So all we need to do is just delete them now that we know where our first row is. Okay, so I've got the approved status there. If I hit save, it's done the recorded date of when the approved status went in, which is great. So now that I've got an approved project, as the project administrator, I would go into the project level folder, right click. Oh, I've missed a step, sorry. In the intake sheet, I'm just going to copy the name of the project. And then I'm going to go into my project level folder, right click, save as new, paste the name of the project in and hit save. And that's creating me a project folder with a project plan and the metadata in place. Now, as part of the project admin, you need to link through to the metadata. So again, I'm just going to pop back to the intake sheet and copy the project number. If you know the project number, you might not have to visit the intake sheet to copy it. I'm going into the metadata of that actual project and pasting it in place. And you can see this metadata is now picking up all of the pertinent data from that intake sheet. And hit save there. And then in order to make all of the dashboards work, we just need to pop back to the intake sheet and scroll along to the yellow columns. And in the yellow column, use the cell link button to link through to the new metadata and pick up the yellow columns from there. So Smartsheet's template have created some nice color coding so we know which columns we're picking up and which ones we're linking through. And that is the setup. Now you would run your project. So in your project folder, open up the project plan. It's all ready to be used. I'm going to set the start date to June the 1st. And that has layered up my project activities because I had all my predecessors in place. The Gantt chart has updated effectively. And this is where baselines come in. So we've got our activities, we've got our dates that we're due. We're quite happy with the durations and the way it's all laid out. So I'm going to take a baseline snapshot right now before I start to make any progress on my project. So in hitting the baselines button, it comes up and says, do you want to show the baseline in the Gantt? I'm going to leave that on. And all of these dates are all the same because when you set a baseline, it's going to copy the start date from your start date column into the baseline start date column and the end date from the end date column into your baseline end date column. And the variance at the moment is on schedule because everything is matching. So you click on set. And what that does, if I turn the Gantt view off for a moment, turn it off for a moment, going to grid view, is added baseline start, baseline finish, and variance to the project. These are locked for editing. You can't type over the top. You hear me trying to type over the top, it's not going to work. So these are now set in stone. But as you change your dates, you'll see the variances change. So I just want to show what's happened to the Gantt view. Can you see just underneath each of the task boxes, there's a thin grey line, and that thin grey line is your baseline. If I now say, actually, I'm going to start the project a little bit early, so I'm going to start it on Monday the 31st, we've shifted everything across, and now our linked tasks are no longer in line with that baseline. And if I scroll along here, you can see the variance is now we're a day ahead of schedule. If I change that start date back a week, you can see we're now 6 days ahead of schedule. And that has affected the Gantt by pulling all of the tasks away from that baseline. You can, if you wanted to, say, let's say this particular task here is going to be delayed for a little bit. So maybe we could say that's delayed to the 15th. Manually changing a start date will break the predecessor relationship, but that's fine. We click on OK, and you can see from then on in, we're a little bit closer to our baseline. Let's say this one is going to be 2 days late. And again, oh no, that was the wrong one to do. Let's do this one. What am I doing? Changing it will break it, that's fine. But then you can see all of this movement and your baseline stays steady in place, but you can have some things that are before and some things that are after. And you can see your variance is kicking in and showing you what's ahead of schedule and what's behind schedule as you go through the project. So that's a little bit on the baselines. All very exciting. And now if I just whiz up, finally, I am going to stop in a second, to the portfolio level and have a look at that portfolio level dashboard. You can see that my business critical is in place, although my health is not. And my active project is not. So I'm just going to double check as to why that broke. It says not started because I haven't added any data yet. There you go. We're now in progress and our ragballs are showing progress. And now if I go back to my portfolio dashboard, I've got some progress going in, although it's not gone in. So I probably broke it, but that's the whole point of a live demo. Things don't always go to plan, but the logic is there. I just need to double check my statistics. But I'm going to stop now because I've been going on far too long. Apologies for that taking a long time, but you do have to do quite a lot to your template in order for it to work. I'm just going to quickly whiz over to David, if you're ready, David, to take on the screen share. and just show us how to get that portfolio over into Teams.
Thank you, Debbie. Right, just a second, I'll just get the screen shared over there. Right, okay, so we're going to have a look at getting the Smartsheet data resources over into Teams. So as we know, Teams is very much on the rise at the moment, and it offers some really useful features that allow us to bring information from other systems, such as Smartsheet, and to display that information directly within the Teams environment. Okay, so for anyone that's not familiar with Teams, what we're looking at here is these are the teams themselves that we're members of. You can be members of more than one team, and if you look into the team, you can see it's split up into various sections, and these sections are called channels. Channels are usually subject specific, and they represent an area where team members can communicate and they can work collaboratively together. We've got tabs along the top here. Now the posts is for instant messaging and communication. We've got a file section where we can share documents, and you can even sync that with OneDrive as well, so that's quite useful. And we've also got a wiki area, which is basically a data repository, like a library. Okay, now it's within these sections along the top that we are going to add a new tab. And that's where we can actually pull in other data like from Smartsheet. So what we'll do, we'll create a new channel because we're doing PMO stuff. So I'll have a channel here, and we just call that PMO. Okay, so we'll just add that one on there. Okay, and then what we're going to do now is look at the channel that we've created, and you can see we've already got the posts and the files and the wiki. This is the standard tabs that we always end up with for a channel, but we can press the plus button and to add a new tab. Okay, now what that will give us is access to a whole bunch of different app icons. Now, we're going to be using Smartsheet. Obviously, it's showing because I've been using it myself, but if it's not showing up on yours, you can just start typing Smartsheet into the search area, and that will help you find that. So we just click on the Smartsheet app. Okay, so what it's doing now, it's asking us for login credentials. So it's basically that means it wants my Smartsheet login information. So I'm just going to copy my user ID, and then we'll just click login. Okay, so I'll put that user ID in there, and then just provide the password and log in. Okay, so now Smartsheet's responding, just confirming that you definitely want to give access to the Teams environment, give it access to your Smartsheet account. So we just click on allow. And then in just a few seconds, what we'll be looking at here is my live Smartsheet environment. So it's gone straight through to my Smartsheet using my credentials, and it's now found all of the usual Smartsheet resources that I would normally access. So what we'll do, we'll go into workspaces, and this is the workspace that Debbie's just been working on. And then we can see the template set. So let's say we're going to go in at portfolio level, and we're going to grab the roll-up dashboard here. So we'll just click on that. Okay, now it's just confirming that it's read-only. Now, the thing with pulling anything from Smartsheet into Teams, it has to be published. And that is a standard sort of Smartsheet security feature. And it just means that it's a bit more restrictive so that people can see the data, but they don't have so much rights to change that data. Now, obviously, as a dashboard, that's perfectly fine, because we're really going to be just interested in viewing that information. So we can OK that. Now, obviously, because it's a brand new dashboard, it's not been published yet. So we should be able to publish that from within here. And we'll just do that. Set the security settings and then click Save. Okay, and then what we're seeing now is it's pulling that dashboard back from Smartsheet and displaying it within this, this tab. Okay, and there's the information that we've just seen being created just a moment ago. Now, the tab itself you can rename as well, which obviously it's pulling in the full name at the moment, which is quite long, so we can just rename that and maybe just call that PMO roll-up. Okay, so now we can move between our channels. When we come back to the PMO channel, we've got that tab and we can just click on that, and that gives us very easy access into that that dashboard, so we can keep an eye on all that information coming through from Smartsheet, and we don't even need to leave the Teams environment. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope you've been able to hear me okay. I shall pass now back to Debbie.